This happened recently, and honestly, I'm not sure what to trust anymore. I'm a 25-year-old male. When I was 12 years old, my cousin Lily lost her parents in a car accident. My parents adopted her and we grew up together. She studied in the same school as me and moved out as soon as she turned 20. Even though my mom tried to be a mother figure, Lily always kept her distance from us. She created a wall around her after losing her parents. After moving out, she cut all ties with us. My parents sent her gifts on her birthday, but she never returned our calls. A few months ago, my grandmother called me saying that Lily had shown up and that she was in very bad condition. My mom and I rushed over to see her. She was a completely different person. Her face was filled with scratches and scars, her nails were filthy, and her eyes were always moving. Lily apparently had gotten into some bad stuff. We took her to the doctor to help her get over it. I still remember those nights when she woke up screaming because of what she was overcoming. She scratched her skin so badly that her flesh tore and started to bleed. I had to go back to work, but my parents stayed with my grandma to take care of her. I stayed in a small one-bedroom apartment. One night, while I was sleeping in my room, I suddenly woke up hearing a knock on my door. I got up and walked to the door while thinking who it could be at this hour of night when I saw Lily standing in front of me. I obviously didn't expect her because last time I talked to my mom, she told me Lily was living in a rehabilitation facility. I asked Lily if she was all right, but she didn't say anything. She just smiled and slowly walked in. Her face was different this time. She was looking calm and pale at the same time. I closed my door and followed her into the living room. She stood near a shelf and kept staring at our childhood photograph that I kept there. I asked Lily again if everything was all right, and she turned around and kept staring at me as if she had forgotten to speak. I got worried, thinking she might have escaped from rehab and came here. I was going to call my mom and let her know about all of this when my phone rang. I told Lily to sit down and that I'd be back in a minute. When I answered the phone, it was my mom. I started to tell her that Lily was in my apartment, but she interrupted me and told me that Lily had passed away tonight from unnatural causes. My senses got numb. My heart was pounding in my ears. If Lily is dead, then who the hell is standing in my living room? I slowly turned around and she was there, standing right behind me. I might have screamed and fainted to the floor. When I woke up, I saw daylight coming from my window. I had slept on the floor the entire night, but I couldn't tell if it was a dream or if I had imagined everything. The next week, I went to my grandmother's house to attend Lily's funeral. I didn't tell my mom about Lily showing up that night. And after the funeral, my parents insisted that I stay the night at Grandma's. We had a quiet dinner, and then we all went to bed. My parents and my grandma slept downstairs. I slept upstairs. Lily and I used to share this room when we used to travel here during our summer vacations. I couldn't help but think about Lily, and that night I dozed off thinking all this when I heard my alarm going off. I opened my eyes and realized I couldn't move. I could only move my eyes. My breathing increased rapidly. It was the most terrifying state of mind one can ever experience. No matter how much I tried, I couldn't force my body to move. Before going to bed, I had hung my jacket behind the door. I kept staring at it while waiting to break free from the situation when the jacket started to float in the air. It started to come at me, floating on its own, when Lily appeared from the darkness. She stretched her hands and showed me her arms. Blood was dripping from them. She didn't say anything, just stood there. Suddenly, I was able to wiggle my toe, and I understood my body had been released. But Lily didn't disappear this time. She stood there, staring at me with her wide eyes. I was finally able to scream and started backing away from Lily. I gasped for breath while asking Lily what she wanted from me. I told her that I didn't do anything wrong and that I loved her. When she didn't respond, I shouted at her to stop torturing me like this. My mom rushed to my room hearing my voice, and as she opened the door, Lily vanished. My jacket laying on the floor where she stood. I told my mom what had happened, and she was able to calm me down and convince me that it was just a nightmare. Even after I returned to my apartment, Lily continued to visit me while I slept. Each time I would be woken up by something moving in my room, and each time I could only move my eyes until she came so close to me that she almost touched me before I could finally move away from her. She haunted me so much that I became afraid to sleep, which affected my ability to work and function as an adult. My mom came to visit me when I stopped returning her calls. I broke down and told her all about Lily's visits and my inability to move during the nightmares. I was angry because I didn't understand what was happening and why Lily had chosen me to torture. That's when my mom told me that there was something they never told me. She said that they knew if I knew, I would think the same thing Lily thought about her and my dad. She told me that Lily was actually my sister. My mom said that she had gotten pregnant when she was in high school, and she and my dad were not in a position to take responsibility for a child. She continued to say that my aunt and uncle offered to adopt her, and even though it pained her to see Lily being raised by someone else, she wasn't in a position to do anything about it. She finished her story by telling me that my aunt and uncle were not good parents and struggled with their own issues, and that while she was sad that they passed, she was relieved to have Lily back. I was angry because of what she said. All this time, Lily was actually my sister, and now Lily was haunting me in my sleep almost every night. That night, when I finally couldn't fight my tiredness, I fell asleep on the couch and woke up to the sound of clattering in the kitchen. I couldn't move again, and my head was contorted in a way that made it hard to breathe. I started to panic as I saw the dark figure of Lily moving toward the couch with something in her hand. Blood was dripping from her arms as she moved closer to me. I was suffocating, and afraid, and hoped that Lily would come closer to me so that I could start to move again and get away from her. But she stood at a distance this time and dropped what was in her hand on the ground. She backed away and disappeared from sight. Just when I thought I was going to die, I could breathe again and I could move. I sat up panting as I caught my breath. On the ground, where Lily had dropped what she was holding, was a picture I had of Lily and I as kids. I haven't seen Lily since, and while I miss her, I don't miss how she would visit me. I was in college in Charleston when I met Ethan. We became friends in no time. Ethan and I were also part of the popular group, hence we were always around each other. And when we went to a party at a friend's house, Ethan asked me to be his girlfriend. Everything happened so fast that I barely gave it a thought about whether I actually loved him or not. When I look back at it now, I feel the reason I said yes was to remain in the popular group. Everyone we knew started addressing us as the most popular couple, and I enjoyed all the attention. After dating for 4 months, I moved to his place because that is where our entire group used to hang out most of the time. It was a rented house with 2 bedrooms, a living area, and an open kitchen. Ethan and I shared the big bedroom, which was at the end of a long corridor. The other bedroom mostly stayed empty, unless one of our friends passed out after a heavy night of drinking. I won't go into too much detail about our relationship, because that is not important regarding the incident I am about to share. Ethan was a party animal, and almost every other night he drank himself to the core and passed out on the bed. On a similar night like that, we partied hard and Ethan went to bed. I was saying goodbye to my friends as they all started to leave. We wrapped up earlier that day because we had an important lecture to attend in the morning. I cleaned the living room a bit and started to walk to the bedroom to get some sleep. The house was feeling extremely quiet as the loud music and crazy laughter ended for the night. I was close to the bedroom when I heard a gagging sound. I quickly entered the room, thinking maybe Ethan was feeling sick, but what I saw creeped me out. Ethan was lying still on the bed, with his eyes wide open, staring at the corner of the room. I could tell he was trying to move, but he couldn't. It was as if he had no control over his body. Seeing me enter the room, his gaze shifted at me, and his eyes turned even wider, as if he had just gotten 10 times more scared. I rushed to him and started screaming at him to get up, but he couldn't move a single muscle. I got so freaked out that I grabbed my phone and started calling our friends, when suddenly he gasped and sprung up on the bed. It was as if he broke free from a state of trance. He was breathing heavily, and his body was shaking in fear. I immediately poured him a glass of water, and Ethan drank it in one go. I waited for him to calm down, After 10 minutes, his breathing finally became normal and he got up. He then went to the washroom, splashed water on his face, and came back to bed. I asked him if he was okay and if he needed to go to the hospital, but he shrugged it off, saying that it was sleep paralysis and that he hadn't felt that way in a long time. He seemed like it was nothing to be worried about, even though I heard many things about sleep paralysis. That was the first time I witnessed someone having an episode like that, and the next day, we didn't tell any of our friends about this. Ethan behaved as if nothing happened, but one thing kept bugging me. What was it he was looking at that night? Time went by, and this memory started to fade. Ethan started drinking almost every night, and I didn't like this anymore. We had several fights about his drinking habit. One night, we had a huge shouting match right in front of our friends. Everything got awkward, and they called off the party. Ethan slept in our bedroom, and I locked myself in the guest room. That night, I cried myself to sleep and passed out on the bed. It must have been 2:30 in the morning when I opened my eyes and found the door wide open. I remembered very well that I locked the door as soon as I stepped into this room. Suddenly, I heard footsteps outside the room. I wanted to get up and see who it was, but no matter how much I tried, I couldn't move a muscle. My heartbeat got faster as I realized what happened to Ethan that night was happening to me now. I can't explain the scariest feeling from that moment, but it was like I was all awake in a terrifying dream. Soon, the footsteps started to come closer, and I saw a creepy, bony hand grabbing the wall adjacent to the door. I wanted to close my eyes, but my body was not in my control. Slowly, a dark figure started to lurk in behind the wall. A pitch black face peeked right into the room. I saw a pair of eyes staring right at me. They were such big, black eyes with no eyeballs inside them. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The figure then gave a huge grin, and I saw his rotten teeth gushing out of his bloody gums. Just then, I heard footsteps coming towards the room, and I woke up screaming. Ethan was banging on the door and calling my name. Surprisingly, the door was locked, and I somehow stood up and stumbled to the door. With trembling hands, I opened the lock and fainted on the floor. When I woke up, sunlight was flooding into the room. Ethan was sitting right next to me with a worried face. He asked me why I screamed last night, and I told him everything I saw. But as soon as he heard about the black-eyed man, his face turned pale. Ethan kept quiet for some time, then held my hand and told me that when he was 13 years old, he had his first episode. He watched himself sleeping in that episode. He thought it was just a dream, and it didn't matter. But as time passed, he started seeing this dark figure walking in his room, sometimes standing in the corner. He said he had never seen someone so scary. It was a pitch black human figure, more like a shadow. The only thing that stood out in his features was his black eyes and a terrifying grin with rotten, bloody teeth. He said his mom took him to many psychiatrists, and after heavy doses of medication, he somehow stopped having these experiences. But the night after a really long time, he saw him again. He was standing in the corner of his room and watching him. He told me that when I came into the room, he saw the figure standing right behind me, and that's why he was so freaked out. We both felt paranoid and had no idea what to do about this situation. I mean, there's no way we could share this with someone without getting labeled as crazy. We had no other choice than to keep it between us. I didn't have any episodes after that night, which is why I thought I could ignore this matter. Until one night, things got out of hand. I woke up again in the same manner, finding myself caught in a trance. I could see Ethan deeply asleep beside me, and no matter how much I tried, I couldn't wake him up because I couldn't move or scream at all. I gazed at the room, waiting to get shit scared by the black-eyed man once again, but I didn't see anyone around. My breathing got heavy, and I waited to wake up when I suddenly heard a chuckle right next to my ear. I looked at my side and saw the black-eyed man laying next to me. I can't tell you how horrifying he looked, and I almost felt my heart stop. And when I blinked, the man was gone. I got up, panting in fear, and started to wake up Ethan. While pushing him vigorously, I kept my eyes on the door, expecting the black-eyed man to return. But suddenly, Ethan sprung on his bed and started to strangle me. He choked me with all his strength, and I kicked in the air to free myself. The pressure on my chest made me feel like my heart would explode, but somehow I woke up again, and Ethan was still asleep. The next morning, I didn't say a word to Ethan. We were already fighting, and I had decided to move out. We still dated until the end of the term, but things changed between us. I was scared to spend nights with him, and he had this guilt that he obviously didn't deserve. We parted ways, and it's been 7 years. I haven't heard from him. I don't know how we both had the same dream about the same thing, but whatever it was, I consider that phase to be the darkest time of my life. Three years ago, I experienced sleep paralysis for the first time. Although I knew it was all in my head, the fear at the moment was so intense and so real. I'm the kind of girl who enjoys horror movies and spooky stories. I kind of enjoyed it. From there, I continued to have small sleep paralysis experiences that were actually kind of boring and less frequent. It all just kind of became normal for me. But last year, around the month of December, my dad and my brother had some kind of argument in which my brother was speaking very poorly about my dad. It actually hurt my dad's feelings quite a bit, and he stopped going to church. We had a small temple outside of our house, where most of the time my parents would go to worship. It felt quite strange to me because I hadn't even seen him pray since. But regardless, I figured it was just a personal situation, and I shrugged it off. Even so, I don't know why, but I felt as if my surroundings were starting to become negative, and something, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but something was getting me scared. I started having nightmares, like I was being chased by some evil, headless, skinny entities, burning everything they touched like hellfire, torturing people. Not only this, but I also witnessed some strange sounds coming from my cupboard, like scratching and quiet bangs. I shared these experiences with my twin sister, and she really didn't believe me at first, but she did tell me she was also feeling a negative energy in the house, something she couldn't explain. It wasn't long before school reopened from summer vacation, and we were too consumed with schoolwork to think about what was going on in our home. And interestingly, once we became distracted, we stopped noticing the activity in our house. But last night was different. It was terrifying, and something I can't ignore. I was completing my homework and started getting tired. It was almost 3 in the morning, so I decided it was time to go to bed. While I was laying down, I was just watching my ceiling, but it looked darker than usual. I opened my curtains to allow some of the street lights to enter my room, but nothing seemed to be working. As tired as I was, I decided just to ignore this and try to fall asleep. But as I drifted off, it kind of felt like my body was floating in the air, like I was hanging from the ceiling. It wasn't a bad feeling. I kind of liked it. But then I realized my body was getting stiff, like I was paralyzed. And it felt like an energy above me was taking something from me, like attracting me upwards. My torso, mainly in my chest, started to expand toward the ceiling, and it was becoming hard to breathe. I started to lose control of my body, and I was feeling like I had no life left in me. My soul was leaving. I started to suffocate. My body was pulsing badly, and I could literally feel every single pulse in my teeth, my neck, my head, my arms, and my legs. I could feel it, but I couldn't move. I started to get pains in my chest. I was so scared that I started trying to wake my body up, and luckily, I started to get back some control. I was able to open my mouth, and when I did, I gasped for air like somebody who was drowning in water. As soon as I got my breathing under control, I opened my eyes wide and scanned the entire room. I could not believe what I saw. There in the dark was a disfigured shadow watching me with its bright white eyes. And when I looked at it closely, it just walked out of my bedroom. I was so scared I couldn't sleep, and I ended up playing some prayers on my phone, which I never do. I couldn't believe what I saw. I told my dad about the incident and about all of the things that I had experienced before, and he said with a very serious and worried look on his face that I didn't have to worry anymore, that he would always protect me. And then he said that he forgave my brother, and I still don't know what he meant.